Now that the recording has started, we're calling the meeting to order at 4:04 or 4:05 now. And Andy is taking the minutes. And we'll move into the agenda, which I've lost, but I know we have a few issues. Can't find Word files. That part of the meeting here is just to talk about is ARPA funds, whether we want to talk about those because they're starting a long list of things there. But the first item is there's a Wednesday night meeting with advisory about the sustainability coordinator budget. And as we discussed last time, we were going to talk about that today in prep for that. And see what we collectively want to say or who says what. There was the advisory email about, I want to talk about the budget, but it was also in the email there, if we recall, right, which I had up front, I lost. I'll get it again. Is they were interested in the going forward, what it is that's going to go on, as they say here, reading from it, like to go on sustainability budget, particularly the hours allocated to the position and the plan moving forward for evaluation of the role and the performance metrics by which the sustainability coordinators are to be evaluated. So I've sort of began to little talks with, or just broached the issue with Dorothea, but we haven't gotten far. But I guess whether I'd like to just open it up to whether you think it's appropriate, Dorothea, to say what you're thinking about that. And because we have, and there's a job description that I'll just, before I do that, that we haven't always, let's see, where is it here? There was a job description. There is a job description for all the for both coordinators. It does have some metrics in there of cost reductions in energy and other resource use, external financing raised, reductions in greenhouse gas emissions at the town and residential level.
It would be maybe helpful to pull this up to remind everybody. This is a while ago, right?
Well, this is when everybody was hired, basically. We haven't gone back and looked at it, which we should probably do annually. I mean, I could certainly share the screen, but it's a matter of what we want to
For me, it would be helpful to be reminded what this initially was meant to be.
Yes, this is what when let's say when you, for example, signed your acceptance, this was attached to your job.
Can you make that a little larger?
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see.
I'm squinting.
Should I make it larger? Tell me when to stop.
It's fine for me.
Yeah, that's better.
That's okay.
I'm going to try to scroll down so you can see a little bit more of
There we go.
the job description.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the date on that document?
This document was signed by, back in, I'm sorry, distort your brains by moving. This was signed by the personnel board in October, the select town administrator. And I wrote it with part of a bunch of people.
Okay,
So
October.
this is 2+ years ago.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And I'll note one thing here, that there was some debate here. The report directly to the town administrator and functions under the general supervision of the Energy Committee was what was put here and on the further down here. under communication and contacts,
Mm-hmm.
there's this section here about there's the select board. You could see that the energy committee role here, there was this sort of a, doesn't fully overlap, but it's sort of with that first thing about the role of the town administrator and the energy committee, but you could see the text here for purpose.
Kind of interesting that the Energy Committee has supervision and prioritization of work, and the administrator helps prioritize. That's almost the opposite of the way it's been.
Well, it's not really, the administrator, I don't know what role they've really played, but whatever, it's a, whoops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just making note of it. It's interesting to me.
So this is what
Mhm.
now, this is what we have here. Then there's the reality of how we operate. And then there's what, but more importantly, looking forward, there's maybe two layers for the advisory issue of whether, how are these positions going to be evaluated and assessed? Is what I think they're looking for, and as to who does it, some combination of town administrator or our committee is another layer. We don't have to have it all worked out, but I think that there needs to be a something specific said to address. I don't know if people want me to pull up the email from advisory, which I had read before. Would that help to have that on the screen too?
Michael, that's not a bad idea because that document is more timely and of course, much shorter. This document's very interesting. I don't think I've ever seen it, so it's a little much.
Mhm.
It's a little much to absorb right now.
I
You
think I
know,
sent it out. I hopefully sent it out to all of you a little while ago.
I don't think
Not
so.
to,
think so.
just to say that I'm not holding it back. It's just to my own defense. Oh, yeah, it goes on. This is a long,
Well, if you
there's basically 3 areas of work. There's basically doing planning work and coordination, which is like akin to doing a climate action plan and then coordinating with all the other groups and towns and whatever. There's fundraising and financial support. Then there's doing projects and sustainability and projects. And then there's outreach. I mean, these are the 4 areas in a way that we do anyway. In terms of,
Michael, may I suggest that we add some focus to this discussion concerning the job description? And one of the areas that you mentioned was reviewing the how the position is going to be evaluated. And I recall that when this document was proposed and agreed upon, that was an issue back then as well. So maybe it would streamline the discussion if you and Dorothea and Gino provided what the 3 of you think would be the best way of evaluating that position.
And there are in the job description, there are those 4 areas which would help kind of.
by the way,
Yeah.
do you see the job description in the email? Did I get? I'm not sure what you're actually seeing now.
Right now, we're seeing the
Your
email from Stephen Saya about the meeting on Wednesday.
Oh, you don't see the job description?
We did, but
Okay,
you took
fine.
it
I'm trying
down.
to do it so you could see both at the same time.
And I can also see your inbox.
Yeah, I don't know why they're,
I always hide my inbox.
yeah, I usually do too, but I usually do a better job.
When you have
of-
something to hide, that's when you need to hide it.
Exactly,
Hey,
exactly.
nap time. Nap.
How about this? What am I exposing now?
Oh, now
Oh,
you're,
you did it.
They're
You
both,
did it.
they're both there now.
Excellent.
Very good.
Well, that's what I was gonna start. I mean, went on too long, but I guess I'd turn it over to the others. I mean, I've said before that there's the criteria here, and it's hard to evaluate outreach as well, to sort of come up with the new metrics for outreach in terms of number of families touched, number of programs done. And
But there is a
there's a
lot
whole set
there.
of outreach activities that we could measure by just doing the activity, even though it's less clear that how many people showed up. I mean, we could evaluate, include in that, how many people showed up for different things.
Well, but would that be the fault of the sustainability coordinator if fewer people showed up than hoped for?
Oh, no, I am just saying that we could just list the number of activities that we're trying for them, and therefore we could just do it. It's more a matter of our showing that we evaluate what activities are worth doing and not doing. I don't think it's a fault per se, as opposed to just shows that we try to learn by doing. And we're monitoring what we're doing and reacting to that. But I should stop talking and let Dorothea talk.
Honestly, I don't know if this is a good spot to be talking about how your job should be evaluated.
Why is
You
that,
know,
Dorothy?
let me just say how a little aggravation comes along here, right? I have been reaching out to our town manager, or excuse me, town administrator, to understand basically all of this, because this is before my time. And I was brought on board with half a position. And that came about when I was basically looking at my job description as a full kind of like sustainability coordinator position I applied for. And then later on, people were telling me, oops, you got just half of the job.
Oh, that's
So
okay. Yeah, go on.
please let me have a couple of minutes here, Michael. And that's really important, right? Because that's my perspective of things. Well, then I think this is unique, and I have been reaching out to other people that are sustainability coordinators. This is this unique situation that town of Sherborn came up with. And a lot of people have been influencing how this position should be and what should it do. And now eventually never really thought about how do you evaluate that person with that kind of job description. And let me, I'm
go
not
ahead.
finished yet.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were finished. My bad.
Yeah, sure. And I understand that, you know, you guys had a unique situation where I think Gino has a very strong skill set. At least that was my perception, how this was explained to me, that he has such a strong and long held position in town that it didn't make sense to bring somebody new in. But at the same time, they wanted to bring in somebody in with the skill set of like reaching out and engagement and all of this. So I think I was confronted with a kind of like truncated version of a sustainability coordinator compared to other towns. And that's fine. At the same time, I think the notion was raised that I could raise worth of my salary in terms of grants. No. Well, then.
I can explain that.
Good, Fred. Then please go ahead, because I'd like to understand at what point our select board or people of the select board understood or came to the understanding that that I would be able to raise multiple times of my salary.
I'm gonna intervene here. Sorry, Fred and Dorothea. I think that going over this history, as we talked about last time, is not going to be the best use of our time. I think we're forward looking. I think we can shift the mindset about what's going to be raised or not raised. But I think for Wednesday's meeting, and we could talk about this more, but given what we have on Wednesday, I think there's a halftime, I mean, there's a 19-hour position there, and it's a matter of how that every position is evaluated. And it's just a matter of coming up with some basic kind of criteria and metrics or something that could be I mean, some of it which could be fairly soft, that we can come up with for this, that and we can work on specifics as we go forward. But I think that for the sake of something for Wednesday and our own time limits here, that we can be a little bit more focused on what does make sense. I mean, we don't have to go back. What makes sense going forward?
Mike, if I can just add on to that, I agree with you. I think it would be wrong to have the job description have deliverables in it that the coordinator then would be judged upon. I think what makes more sense is to have a process in the job description where projects are decided, and then for the coordinator and with the coordinator, and then the coordinator would be evaluated on those deliverables. So for example,
That's the future orientation that we should be taking for sure. But I do want to, I really need to say this, because Dorothea, your point is not inaccurate, that it was said that the position could bring in more than the position cost the town. But the position is both you and Gino. And I think that's a really important way of presenting it. This is simply the position. And if you guys decided the position was going to be broken between two people, the evaluation is still based on the position, not which one got a grant and which one was working with the schools and which one. That's irrelevant to me.
right,
We're a team.
right.
Tom, you're just gonna have to butt in.
I'm pretty good at that, but thank you for the invitation. Now, what I just wanted to add, I'm shocked at this job description.
Yeah,
I've written job descriptions for 40 years, and I've never seen one this long.
thank you so much.
And it's for a part-time position. This is crazy. This whole document is crazy. But it was written 3 years ago, and you were probably focusing. Was this written for a full-time position as written? Except for the 19.5 hours?
I don't want to debate the job description. I could go over this and defend it. I wrote
No,
most of it. so
I'm
could
just
defend it, but I don't think it's
asking a simple
useful.
question. Was it written for a
No, it
full-time
wasn't.
job?
It was never written. It's written only for a half-time job.
And
It's
it was
not that you
also
have to,
acknowledged
these
at
are
the
just
time that
activities
there
to
was more
do.
there than a half-time job to
I'm-
do in a year.
I'm shocked, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Fine. The question is, what are we gonna say about evaluation? I haven't resent this to them. The question is, I'm just giving it as an example of where we had some different metrics. I don't care. We could ignore this job description. I could wipe it off the screen here. What are we gonna say? What's gonna be said by whom on Wednesday night?
If you look under the evaluation metrics, there are 4 areas. We've done work in each of those 4 areas. I think you just structure it that way and say, there you go, that's it. Now let's look forward. How are we going to do it from here?
Where are the 4 areas, Fred?
It's only
Energy,
3 here.
greenhouse gas reduction, fundraising, and financial support. They're sub to that first paragraph or second paragraph under evaluation metrics. They're the same things, just fleshed out.
I see.
So like a greenhouse gas inventory, right? That's part of the evaluation is, do we have a greenhouse gas inventory? And if not, why not? We do. And I think we have to be realistic. Every position always gets evaluated. I've been a manager for years. I never didn't evaluate the work that my people were doing. But I also didn't expect them to do everything in a job description. And we discussed that, Michael, when we originally built this thing, is that, any job description, the prioritization is where the focus goes for evaluation. And if if there's one of these bullets, like, I don't know, develops and implements mechanisms that didn't happen, it didn't happen because it wasn't prioritized. I mean, that one did happen, but I was just using it as an example. But you can't get around evaluation. It's got to happen.
Can I add something to that, Fred?
Please.
At last week's select board meeting, I don't know who else might have been on that. And I forget what started it, but there was, I think it was about the town administrator position. There was a long talk about job evaluations going on in town hall. And one of the select board members, I forget who it was, made the statement, there's no annual job evaluations taking place. And I was shocked by that. And I don't know if it was a true or untrue statement. Gino, would you know the answer to that?
I think it's haphazard. Some get done, some don't get done.
Yeah, that's.
But I think they specifically pointed to the example of the town administrator himself, that he had not been evaluated, at least not regularly. He probably had some evaluations.
That sounds like a very dysfunctional building.
Do we even agree, no matter what's in this job description, that in terms of answering, that the plan moving forward for evaluation of the role and performance metrics? Now, the idea of what it is that you, Dorothy, are going to say, what it is the Energy Committee is going to say, what Gino might say. I mean, what are we, what, I guess, what, Dorothea, would you plan to say to them when asked? And what do you want to say versus what you think the committee could say, or whether we want to present ourselves fully as a whole team, and who says that?
I'm shocked that you're asking me this question, Michael. You have written up this document. Now you want me to go ahead and defend this? No.
No, I'm not saying it. I'm asking you what you would say. I said ignoring this document.
I don't ignore this document. So let's go at the elevation metrics. Here you have them. Under job duties, blah, 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 point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 6 points. So let's talk about, no, honestly, I want to dial back and say, that this should be really handled by an HR person, right? This situation, me evaluated, or I'm being evaluated about my job performance the last 2 years, should be handled by an HR person.
Well, usually there's somebody who does that. HR might ask for it, but there is somebody in an organization that does a job description. I mean, the question is, how would you say for yourself whether what you're doing is making sense or the best way to go about it? How do you even think about it that way?
If I can jump in for a second, I think the evaluation metrics stated here, those 3 items, which in a way could be either 2 or 4, depending how it's broken down, but one would be if it were in terms of 2, it would be 1 financial, which breaks down into cost reductions and grants, and 2 would be reductions in carbon emissions, A, from the residential sector, and B, from the town side. Or you could do it 4 and have all those separate. But again, I think it just has to be done as a unit, not by individuals. So in terms of evaluation metrics. And I mean, one way to break it down possibly is somebody give an overview, like either Michael or somebody else on the committee, and then each of us say, Dorothea and I each say the types of things we've done in terms of those evaluation metrics. The tough part is we can measure carbon emission reductions from the town. We can't measure them really from the residential side. We can make estimates. We can say, oh, X number of people. I guess the best we can do is say X number of people have added solar panels or have purchased an electric vehicle or heat pumps or whatever. But we really can't measure that reduction. If people are driving less, there's absolutely no way to, in the case of adding equipment, at least you can make an estimate, but in terms of behavioral changes, you can't measure that. And then maybe that's part of the point we need to make. But also that we're supporting the state's goals and actual mandates, and we're doing our share, but it's just difficult to measure by any exact means what's happening on the residential side.
That's reasonable.
Well, that's why I was suggesting that even if it's just, okay, we've given these many talks. I mean, we could just measure it by an output side of how many sort of Zoom seminars have been had, what access to other groups that we've collaborated with, and having people come to them. Right, the issue of what I said before about how many people show up, it's not for an evaluation of the job per se, as opposed to an evaluation of what the methods are and how successful they are, so that we adjust our methods, that we're basically trying to do different types of outreach, trying to see whether the website works, whether Mass Energize works, to what extent do they work, do we make them better, or are they just all different tools that are a mix? And altogether, we're just trying to get early adopters to move. And you do that through some education. Do we want to do a program of heat pumps, or do we want to do a program of hiring a consultant who's available for electric vehicle consultations? These are examples of that we could list, of the fact that we're going to run some that. I mean, this evaluation issue here is not just purely HR, as opposed to, it's even as a group, as Gino said. I look at it as a group. How do we decide what are the best ways for us to spend our time? I mean, we balance it in some sense by what people are. For volunteers, it's a little different, because we say, well, I'm willing to do this because I'm willing to do it. It's not like I could say to you, well, if you've got 3 hours a week, we've all decided this is the best way you as a volunteer should spend your 3 hours a week. You might not do that. It's a little different for a paid job, to what extent you even decide. But even for you, Gino and Dorothea, how do you, and I think of it for myself, how do I decide what I spend my time on? What's the best use of my time given the overall goals of our group? I mean, I could think of, like, I'm really interested in solar projects, and I say, wow, I'd love to do the financial engineering where it's locally owned and everybody buys into the project. But I've come to learn, whereas that I find that fascinating, but that's not a good use of my time. Just hiring, getting and working with a developer to get our projects done would achieve much more. And that I have to evaluate my own, how I approach a topic based on what's going to give the most bang for my time. And you never know upfront. You're trying things. So Dorothy, I don't want to put you on the spot as to that it's more a matter of what are the criteria that we use to decide whether to do something as a group. And how do you decide what to do with your time to achieve what you think is meaningful? And how and can we just articulate some of those kind of things?
The way I decide on how to spend my time is to see where people want to work with me, because I'm one person in a community of 4,500 people. So I'm working in the areas that are important to people. So if doing these webinars, for example, and we see, putting out these webinars, for example, there are more and more people are interested in water to understand what's going on, because they learn about water being a really important resource in the time of climate change. So people are coming along. And I also work with residents that really want to change things around. So wherever there is some energy, I go there. That's the way I work. I need collaborators, people that want to do stuff with me that's meaningful to them. So our youngest member who cannot be here tonight or this afternoon is somebody who is really poised in like working with me for residential outreach. When I call him and say, resident XYZ needs help right now, she doesn't know what's going on in her basement, he goes and meets with her. That's what's working.
And that's kind of typical of outreach. I mean, you reach out and people reply and you engage with them.
Yeah.
I go back to just pointing out, there may be a simple way of talking about all of this, which is under the evaluation metrics. I'll just go back to it. If I look at that energy, greenhouse gas reduction, and renewable energy planning and coordination, we've done every one of them. Every one of those sub-bullets has had some activity around it.
Sure.
You go to outreach, every one of those bullets has some activity around it. So I although nobody's enthused with this job description, it may actually provide us exactly what we need to talk about. I did put it out there, but that it seems to me if we've done everything under the first one, and that's the only one I can see at the moment, then why don't we talk and brag a little bit about all of that? And then there's also the other areas, outreach, there's
I think it has to be forward-looking. That's why I don't want to go through bragging back. We've already given them a list of a lot of things in the annual report. It's
okay,
more,
well,
they're
that's
looking
very
forward.
different than evaluation. That's setting up for future evaluation. I don't think that's what the advisory board is asking for. I don't mean to be over on this, but if I had someone in my team who said, I'm not willing to be evaluated based on what I've been told or my job description, then I don't know, I would have a hard time with that. Now, if they said, we agreed not to do bullet 4, fine, you're not going to be evaluated on bullet 4. But I don't see how we can talk about evaluation forward without at least satisfying advisory that, look, we've done all these things. And that's just from my experience of 40 years of managing. I wouldn't be pleased with someone coming for an evaluation saying, I want to look to the future and not tell you what I've done.
Michael, has an advisory seen that job description?
I can't remember if I sent it to them.
They did back in the day.
Okay.
I doubt they've looked at it.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
recently.
Right. I mean, we could have a whole discussion of this. I mean, I probably disagree a little with you, obviously, a bit with you, Tom, about the level of detail, even though I knew that this was considered very detailed and possibly overly detailed, but it would have still had the same major topics there. And we could have a whole other discussion about, and we could rewrite the job description. There's nothing sacred about this. And we have to get approvals, obviously. But I'd still come back to, even when you're talking, Dorothy, about how you decide to do things, driven by energy, how would you factor in if we all decided like to do the mass save? We decide a program as a group, like the mass save audit program, and doing that, or doing something on heat pumps or something, or solar. Would you respond in terms of how you spend your time to the fact that as a group, we decide to, that we want to run a specific program, and that would take a significant bit of your time compared to what it used, and that it might change what you're doing on a weekly basis. Is that the kind of discussion that makes sense? That we would make some choices like that, which would structure more of what, how you spend some of your time.
All of this sounds good to me. And we are heading into this phase of this job, but I'd like to have a professional HR person involved in this. And I think this is absolutely necessary from my perspective.
Okay, and in terms of, I mean, it comes back a little to how do we decide? Well, then you tell me whether you think it's still an HR issue of how do we, as a group, if we come up with priorities that we think overall are good for meeting our various goals, whether that's decided as a group and we suggest it to you, or that we decide as a group and you'll go with that. How do you feel that that direction could come from us as a group when, let's say, we're heading in that direction on, let's say, mass save, and we want to do something on solar, and that would be best accomplished with a bit of your time.
I don't know where you're heading to, Michael.
I'm trying to decide how that decision would be made. If we had a, how would you take to, or how would you take direction about, would you take direction if we decided as a group that mass save energy audit program and doing a mini solar program are really good things to do that we as a committee think, and as you might agree, or I don't know, it's not like we would take a vote per se, it's hopefully a consensus that these are high priority items. Would you then accept that that's how you would spend your time versus?
Michael, I think we're going in circles here. That's my problem because I have not been explicit enough. So when I was saying we are dealing with a unique job situation as to Sherborn, and that has to do with the historic way this job was set up. We're dealing with an overladen job description and with a lot of things that just don't fit into an 18-hour position. And I feel more comfortable if we have an HR person from the outside looking at this job description and boiling it down to what it really can be in that time frame. And then I think it makes sense to have you come in and say, we're looking at a new job description, and this is what we think is best to be done with that time. I think that's the way I would like to look at this.
And you would be comfortable with the idea that the direction would be given by the Energy and Sustainability Committee.
Plus the advisory board, because we're going to deal with a lot of the future will be determined by the climate action plan. So I think since investments need to be done in that regard, the advisory board should be on it, like in Dover. The financial or the advisory board is basically sustainability committee is kind of attached to that. It's a subcommittee to the advisory board. And I think this needs to be what has to happen in this town in sustainability has to be out front and very transparent so investments can be done. It's not just the Energy and Sustainability Committee. It is the advisory board and of course the select board who needs to be deeply involved in the governance of the plan that's coming up this year. And I want this board to have a part in defining what I'm going to do.
To me, that sounds even more cumbersome than what this job description looks like. You have all of these people involved in deciding what you do, and then I assume also in evaluation for a part-time job seems even more cumbersome.
No, Andy, I think you got it. Excuse me. Maybe I should define it differently. If sustainability works in towns really well, where the select board and the advisory board, people that make decisions on where the tax dollars are needed, are fully on board with sustainability, where the communication between select board, advisory board, and sustainability department are just very kind of like everybody's on one page. And I think that's not the case what my job pertains. And I want that to be rediscussed because it's going to be helpful. It's going to be helpful to really think about where the dollars need to go now to be best benefited or beneficial for this town. Instead of you guys basically pulling your hair out how you can justify my position. And I think this makes completely sense from my perspective. And I have discussed this with colleagues from other towns, by the way. So this is not only my opinion. This is the opinion of other people that are doing the same jobs. They are most effective if they have a very good communication, a very good kind of like support from these two essential boards.
How is that achieved?
That is achieved by building healthy relationships, being transparent with what sustainability is and what it has to serve, and where these dollars are going.
Is that the major goal of our next phase of working on stuff? Would you say is that that's how you would spend your time going forward, is to build that? Is that part of what we're saying?
Could be.
Say
Sorry,
please
Mike,
again,
jump
Michael. Say
What?
please repeat the last question you had.
Is developing that consensus
Mm-hmm,
that you're talking about,
mm-hmm.
should that be the highest priority for your ongoing work?
That should be the highest priority in my mind for your work. For you to be effective as an ESC, this is exactly the priority work you should have on your list. How you can, this body of work that needs to be done in this community, how you can bring it to the attention of other boards.
And what
That
would
should
your
be on
role
the
be in that?
priority list.
And what would your role be with that?
That could be in 18 hours, could be discussed. But I want a professional HR person that looks at this job description a little bit better. Because as it is right now, it's undoable. And we
Michael.
need to redefine this job. And that's all what I'm saying here.
Can I ask two clarifying questions of Michael and the rest of the board? One is actually three things. One, this is a very important discussion, and I support a lot of the points Dorothea just brought up. I don't know how it developed, but we don't seem to have a good relationship with the select board or advisory, and that's not going to help anybody. But my real 2 points, this job description, was that written to cover both Dorothea's hours and Gino's hours? And that really complicates things because Gino has other roles in town. So that's one question right now. And second is, we could talk forever on this topic because it's very important, but we got to get ready for a meeting in 2 days. So I would get the focus back on getting ready for Wednesday. But again, this job description, is it all encompassing of both coordinators' roles?
Yes, it was written for a coordinator role, like I was saying earlier, okay, 2 people have that role, but that's the role in the job description. And I also totally agree, Dorothea, I couldn't agree more, that the select board and advisory really need to be aware and partners here, which means keeping them informed. I don't, however, believe that they should be setting the priorities. We could bring priorities to them and say, do you agree with this? And they could say, no, we don't agree with that one, but we agree with this one. Then okay, because we are an advisory board. But I think it would get really bogged down if, as Andy was saying, you have 3 different groups trying to manage, a position. I just don't see how that works.
I think that's not what I suggested, that these 3 groups should manage a job description. I
Oh,
think,
no, I didn't say you were. I was just, there was a bit of a conversation in that direction, but it needs but your point, Dorothy, is hugely important, that the select board advisory should be hearing from us or you or whatever fairly frequently, so that it doesn't come to the end of a year and they're going like, okay, what did you do? They already know, they already agreed.
Right, I guess we have to figure out how to do that whole process there. I certainly, as a chair, have not spent time doing it, and maybe it's a reallocation of my own effort to the extent that I remain chair. Or somebody else takes on that kind of liaison with the select board and advisory. So yeah, it's part of, with that view, we've taken them. I guess I've been somewhat comfortable, and maybe mistakenly, with a more myopic or smaller view of just trying various efforts to get things going at the municipal level and to do them at the town level. With residents, to figure out outreach programs or more specific things. But maybe the whole climate action plan we've talked about as sort of a focal point for doing bigger things. We had put that off, and now we're trying to work on that. But whether there's a view of, I guess, whether it's your view, Dorothea, as well as maybe some others, that bigger consensus building with the select board advisory and everybody else should be a higher priority than it is now. And whether that's, and I guess I'll come back separate from, I'd like to think it's separate from an HR issue or this job description, is whether that's the main focus of some of this committee's time, as well as the coordinator position's time, is fostering that overall consensus, whether it's done via a climate action plan or some other mechanism, or whether you feel, Dorothea, as the coordinator position, that this broader consensus building and everything else should be on the committee's plate. And then from there will emerge direction for your work or something. I'm trying to figure out the relationship between what you decide to do and this, and where that comes from. Besides the what others, the bottom up thing of who will work with you, whether there's a top down aspect to what determines how you spend your time and who's responsible for that and where does it come from. Let's say we were rewriting the job description. There's HR components, but it's still a technical job or a substantive job for people like us and yourself to figure out what that should look like, and who's giving direction to whom, and
exactly. And I'm don't want to, we want to come to a conclusion on this. I haven't talked to any colleague of mine. I've talked to 3 that were not, and we are looking at this medal of kind of job. and we had discussions about this, Michael, that were going in circles and circles about this last year. Nobody is, of my colleagues in other towns, is under the supervision of the energy committee. People are reporting to the town manager or to the town administrator. And they collaborate with their colleagues on the energy committee.
And that's something I wanted to bring up, is that
Yeah.
a missing piece here is that we both, Dorothy and I both were or are supposed to be reporting to the town administrator. We don't have one right now, but more importantly, for the last couple of years, the town administrator has been not engaged, not visible, not accessible. And I think, and he would be, he or she, when we have a new one, would be the conduit to the Board of Selectmen, and to a lesser extent to advisory, but mostly to the select board. And I think that would make a huge difference. That's something we've really been missing this whole time, other than occasional conversations with him. If we had a person present and engaged and hopefully in line with our way of thinking, the relationship with the select board would be much better, I think.
So how do you, is that what you would say to advisory on Wednesday?
Sure, let's say that.
Yeah.
It's a little tricky though, because I don't want to sound, saying anything about David in particular, but
Right.
I think I could do it in a more general way, that, there were issues and we look forward to, going forward to
Sure.
working better with a new town administrator.
Yeah.
I don't understand why the Energy and Sustainability Committee doesn't have a coordinator attached to the committee, because the committee is comprised of people who are passionate about energy and sustainability in the town of Sherborn. And we meet frequently, every couple of weeks, and we come up with ideas that we think merit further work as a project, but we don't have the time to put in the hours to see these things through. So that's why I think we wanted to have a coordinator. Coordinator,
Can I answer that, Fred? We don't have a budget.
oh, yeah, but if we had a
We don't have a
coordinator,
budget. We have no money.
but I understand that, Tom, but there are two part-time coordinators in the town, but we have no authority to suggest that those coordinators work on any of these projects. And I think that's a fault.
Well, it's a dotted line.
Well, is that really true? I mean, this list, the thing I was going to bring up is that if you go back to the top of the document,
I was
Michael,
gonna, yeah,
if you go back up to the top, right a little bit further. So under the job summary, there's those 5 bullets. And I look at those 5 bullets, and between Gino and Dorothea, all those things have been done. All those things have been worked on. I would give a really good grade to both of them on the work that they've been doing, and that they've been working together and getting this accomplished. I don't know that we need all the sub bullets that are, further down, just keeping those 5 bullets at the top and the work that is being done there. And I agree 100% with Andy that, it's us more than anybody that is talking about the things that we would like to try to get done for the town is the best thing. The town manager or administrator, he's got a lot of different functions that he needs to take care of. And this would be one of the things that he would, you know, possibly coordinate with, will make sure that Gino and Dorothea might, you know, be working on this, but, you know, unless there's any problem out there, you know, them working with us to accomplish these things, having Gino and Dorothea come back and say what the challenges are, so that we need to go back to our select board or advisory board and say, we need, you know, some more, we need funds, or we need this, or we need that to accomplish what we, you know, what we as a town want to accomplish. You know, and at this point, I think that's like that climate action plan, and however we decide to do that, you know, which possibly could cost some money, and you know, we'd have to ask them for that money to be able to get that done. And then Gino and Dorothea would work heavily on it, and we would give our insights into that. That's kind of how I see it happening. And the evaluation of it is that these are the things that they're doing. They're doing all the things that are on our board. We could give a feedback on how well they're doing. And I think it's those 5 bullets right there.
Yeah, but Frank,
without that ton more detail than that.
yeah, but Frank, those are 5 very broad categories. Now, what if the town administrator thought education and outreach should be something that none of us thought would be a great idea, including Dorothea and Gino, but he or she really thinks that the coordinator's time should be spent doing something, and we can't do anything about that.
Well, I guess that's why I'm saying that the town administrator may get into that level of detail or micromanaging, or just allow the coordinators, as is happening right now, to work with us, and then us to provide that evaluation of those 2 employees.
Are you saying that moving forward, if it's reporting to the town administrator, like Gino is talking about, or Dorothea, or what other towns, if the warrant article passes from the students and they say we need a climate action plan, and would you think under that model, it's reasonable, therefore, that the select board would tell the town administrator, okay, we want to design projects and we want a climate action plan for the next year. And the town administrator then directs you, Gino and Dorothea, to come up with a climate action plan with whatever you can do within your budgets, that there's maybe no more money unless you can find it, but that you, within what you have there, come up with some version of something so that responding to the kids' warrant article. Is that something that you would see as a way that it would work, that makes sense to you, that it would come down through that way?
I can speak for myself, and I would say I'm happy to do that. And we have already a couple of towns and colleagues that have agreed on using their plans as a model to adapt. So I don't see a problem with that, but I don't want to preempt Gino's answer. I think you were just about to say something, Gino, right?
Yes, I was going to say, the good thing about that is then it becomes a select board priority, that they're directing us to do it, so they would be more supportive than we do it on the side and then present it to them. So I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So that if the Energy Committee, as we've been talking about, having a climate action plan, that right, without it coming from the select board, it's more, we would work to push. If we have ideas about what we want, we push we go and advocate to the select board, who would then go to the town administrator, who would then go to the 2 of you. That's the route that both of you would prefer.
I think so, because then they have ownership of it, and I think it's easier to get them to support it going forward when it's, you know, in their minds, it's their initiative.
Mhm.
Okay. And so therefore you would take direction in terms of how you spend all of your time based on the priorities passed down that way, that goes through that mechanism versus something from us. Okay, I see that. I mean, I like the idea of the select board owning up.
Yeah, but what happens if they don't? If
That's my
the select board doesn't
good point.
care?
Then they don't care, then that's our problem.
Maybe it's not that they don't care, but
Not a
they have
priority for them.
well, no, maybe not that either. They just don't have the time because they're also volunteer to come up with the ideas and think of what is the best thing.
Well, that's our job, is to give them the
Right,
ideas.
right. So now what happens is we need to advocate for something. We need to sell the select board, and the select board has to go do this chain of command thing.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything wrong. And plus, when we're developing these priorities that we want to recommend to the select board, we do it just the way we're doing it now to some extent as a group down here, like we're meeting today. And we bat around the ideas and say, okay, well, let's see what's the plan that we're going to come forth that we're going to push to the select board. And we all as a group come up with something that we then hopefully can sell to the select board. We've got bigger problems if we can't sell that. And then they have to decide how they're evaluating how things are going. And we still have the job of deciding, okay, is this program working or not working? Is this a good use of our time or not a good use of our time? And we can, and the question is right, we have some mechanism with the town administrator, if they don't do it, to say, okay, you give us some ability to go find out how things are performing, which we might know if we're doing it jointly, or maybe we might not know, and say, okay, here's the things we'd like to know about how they're going, find out, and so that we can say, well, maybe things should be readjusted. And the question is whether that's basically for looping it around to a Wednesday thing of saying that whether in a way, right, I have an issue that we can have a whole other debate about the job description, about whether listing a lot of things that they can work on is tantamount to being too much of a grab bag, or the fact that it allows a focus to say, these are the things we should be looking at, and we might do a subset of them at any given time, which is the way I viewed it when we wrote it. Is that it gives a broad scope, and we're doing lots of pieces of it. It's up to us or the select board to figure out what are the priorities to do in a given year. Whether it's a climate plan or whatever, or that they would say to us, okay, tell us how we should evaluate this work. And we could come up with some matrix of things and say we need some help with that, and ask the coordinators to flesh out the metrics by which things are going. Fred?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the structure of the ESC coming up with our desired priorities, sending it to the select board, them saying, okay, we'll do these, and then sending it to the town administrator. I would hope, and I've seen this in Holliston, or even actually when David in Sherborn, every time is reporting out some stuff to the select board as the town administrator. Sustainability could be one of the things covered every time. So it just stays out in front of the select board. And I didn't see that happening in the past too much unless it was on the agenda specifically to talk about sustainability.
No, I agree. It's a whole other approach than what we've been doing in the last year or so. That is maybe, this would be a good improvement. Now it's a little hard with COVID, or maybe how things were backed up. And it's sort of different than I probably drove some of the difference from that, but that's okay. I can learn new tricks and do it in different ways. Because right, and maybe in hindsight, I was thinking of the staff as being more reporting to the committee, just like other committees have some staff. But I can go with, I like the idea of the fact that this puts it on the committee to spend more time with the select board. And it puts more time when they, and also the coordinators to some extent, either through the town administrator or being told by the town administrator to do more updates with the select board directly. And okay, the question is whether on Wednesday night, and right, to what extent I mean, I have issues how much to change the job description, but we have difference of opinion of whether we're going at it that is a more explicit chain of command seems too harsh, sort of. I mean, I guess I don't know what the jargon is for in town organizational. There's the organizational thing that we're agreeing to push and or require some rewriting of the job of a revision of a job description. And that and whether that's going to be sufficient at this point, other than there's still going to be the questions of whether their evaluation of performance comes from, it's going to come out of the fact that the select board working with the town administrator and advised by us are going to figure out what should be looked at. And that's where the evaluation and the metric performance will come out of. As Gino maybe would be a better articulator of that whole thing there. Or Dorothea, since it's their positions and whether they just take the lead on that.
If you look
Is
at first,
anybody friendly with members of the town administrator selection committee? We should make the new person have a at least interest, if not priority, preferably priority on climate change and
Well, I think we should
sustainability.
formally write.
That's a
And
great.
how it goes on Wednesday, we should formally write a committee memo or a group.
It's a great
To
suggestion.
coordinate a memo about this.
Gina, could you repeat that for me? I want to make sure I have that in the minutes.
That we should lobby for the town administrator selection committee to include sustainability and climate change as a priority or
Got it.
interest of the new town administrator.
Yeah,
Second,
No, we'll do something, not this meeting, but the next meeting. Well, if somebody figures out what to draft, or Eugene will want to draft something from the coordinators that the committee could sign on to. Then where we should just formally send it to the select board and the committee.
if you look in that first box again, which is job summary, and you look at the very last two sentences, the very last kind of like line and a half, it says this position is, and it's hard to read at this size, at-will position under the select board, continuance of employment is subject to the goals and policies of the select board and the subject to continued funding. So they're already under the select board. So I don't know.
I'm not sure how much the job description has to change as opposed to just making an explicit activity. That as to how this gets operationalized.
well, I don't think you should have specific projects or activities listed in the job description, but the process for how projects for the coordinators are selected.
Yeah, it's more process oriented, as you said.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, I guess that's for the prioritization. I see that as that, right, I guess when we wrote this, we were trying to basically write the umbrella for what we think could be going on here, and then it would be, the priorities would be picked and chosen based on what made sense at any given time, but that this was sort of the umbrella. Now, some people don't write different kind of job descriptions. It's different approaches. Could be just process oriented, and I still prefer this kind of scope of things to think through, but that's me. I might be a minority view with Fred, since we worked a lot on it together.
Well, I don't have any problem with the areas of focus for the coordinators as mentioned in the job description, but there's got to be a way that somebody or a group is required to come up with what exactly the coordinators work on.
Maybe we need a process thing that expands on the thing that Frank wrote. And that would basically say we need the job description to be rewritten in terms of the process of supervision and evaluation and setting of priorities.
I
Exactly.
think all that is very important. And if we're talking about ESC helping to set priorities and bringing them to the select board, we can, as a committee, go back through this and say, okay, here are the prioritizations and here are what we see happening under them. And we don't have to rewrite the job description. We just use it as a umbrella, and where the rain falls off the side, fine. But it wasn't something we were going to do. But I think we can use this as a solid beginning to setting priorities that we then bring to the select board that they then say to the administrator do.
Oh, yeah, I think we have that to some extent. It's a matter of whether we do need to flesh out a process part.
Well, I think we need to do that too.
Could it
but
be a few sentences anyway, or it doesn't even have to be in a job description if we just document it as part of an agreement with everybody that this is what we're looking for to go forward. We don't have to phrase this as a job description even for Wednesday night. And I don't know whether it's that process, which I guess whether Gino and Dorothy are going to, coming back to nitty gritty, of whether you want to write it up, because then they have something in writing that you're going to put forth to the advisory as part of the budget process, and that whether we move it into in some form into a job description or not, probably at some point, but that something is documented going forward as to what we're going to now start working on, and then just start working on now, basically, and even without having a new town administrator, that we could still work on as a group, working on what we think we want to give priorities to the select board, who can then feed it back down once we get buy-in. And that is, and whether that's an approach to get for whether, I don't know how much has to be written, or whether you, Dorothy and Gino, write something or present it that way, and with our role, as we've been talking about. And that's what we're going to start implementing going forward now.
Michael, could you scroll down to the bottom of the job description, please? Okay. Okay. So the job description doesn't specify who evaluates the coordinators?
The reports do means that, I think, in the beginning.
The reports?
When in the beginning where it says reports to town administrator.
Oh, okay.
That's how I interpret it. What do you think, Gino, from your?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay, could you scroll up then so I could read that language, please? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So you would just want to change town administrator to select board.
No, there's a big
No,
debate
no.
last week. There was a big debate about the town administrator, the town accountant, about whether anybody reports to the select board other than reports to the town administrator.
Got it.
And there was a split literally down the middle in the case of the town accountant. If I remember correctly, Gino, I think you were there,
Yes.
that it was 2-2 and up in the air about whether a position like that should report, whether anybody should report to the select board, other than the town administrator. And so I don't think in this case, where the town administrator does report to the select board. But that's why I would say you could add a little more process to a job description of just saying, even though it reports to town administrator, that the prioritization of work might be set by the group, the coordinators and the Energy Sustainability Committee present priorities and whatever to the select board, who then adopts some version of those things there and directs, in a sense, the town administrator and in turn the coordinators to carry it out. Is that essentially what I'm hearing from, let's say, what you, Gino, and Dorothea would suggest?
Sorry, Michael, can you, maybe that's just me not being a native speaker, just put this in just 2 straight sentences, what you think I should, how this reporting structure should be?
I'm
Just
not
2
sure how it
sentences.
should be. I'm trying to feed back to you guys. Whether,
Yeah, put the
Okay.
feedback in 2 sentences, please.
okay, I'll try to do that. That, in a sense, priorities, the priorities are set by the select board, who in turn communicates them to the town administrator, who then gets them implemented by the sustainability coordinators. And those priorities come out of a consultative process with the Energy Committee and the sustainability coordinators, generating priorities that they then discuss with the select board to reach a consensus at that level too. Consensus at our level here, where we are now, and then a consensus with the select board. Who then, once it's fixed by that, I can't tell how specific everything will be. I mean, it gets a little tricky with some, but maybe they should be more involved in some of the nitty gritty or not, but that's, and to what extent the role they give us as a committee in terms of working on a project or monitoring how things go as part of the recommendations. Did that help? I guess not.
It's why 2 sentences would be great. So what you were suggesting, maybe I'm reading this.
Gino, did you agree with, did it make sense to you, Gino?
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Gino,
And you explain it, you give it 2 sentences.
Can you
try.
reduce it to 2 sentences?
And you create 2 sentences and see if it works better for Dorothea than my jargon.
Thank you.
And me
Okay,
too.
I'll try to do it in 2 even short sentences. Select board decides priorities formulated through collaborative process, starting with ESC and the coordinators through the town administrator to the select board.
Excellent, thank you.
And then what about and then the path goes the other way,
Yeah, it's a circle.
right? Okay, as long as then it goes down from the select board agreement back down to town administrator and the coordinators.
And where's the Energy and Sustainability Committee and all that?
On the implementation side?
Well, or on the input side on what the priority should
No,
be.
I said it starts with the ESC /
Oh, okay.
coordinator.
Okay. I heard SB, not ESB, so I thought you were talking about the select board.
Acronym soup.
It's definitely a collaboration.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a lot
two-way
different than what we
street.
do now. Right.
But there should be a lot more communication between select board, administrator, ESC. I mean, I think that's where, personally, I think we've fallen short a bit as ESC.
I would agree. Um, yeah. I haven't been able to take the time for that, but it's always been feeling like a little bit shortcoming.
It's not unique to this committee.
And I think it'll also, this way, it'll also put the sustainability coordinators back in terms of having their own direct relationship with the select board in terms of reporting on things. Whether that it goes, what I like is when the town administrator does it as part of his report every week, every meeting, but at various times it gets the coordinators in front of the select board.
As it is in every other town. That really, you know, in my personal experience, the people that move the needle in their towns do have these regular communications with select board and advisory board, as I said.
I'll be a little defensive and say, I hope I never inhibited either of you from doing that. If
We
I did,
never said that.
what?
We never said, I never said that.
Okay, I just wanted to be, I admitted that I was being a little defensive. I just want to make sure that I'm sorry if I did, but okay, good.
And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that there was such a broken down communication going on for a longer period of time that I wasn't clearly aware of, because I came into this from the outside, and it took me a while in this pandemic to understand all of that. It took a while.
Okay, so how's Wednesday night gonna run? The two of you, Dorothy and Gino, are gonna figure out separately what it is you're gonna say, and you're gonna take the lead.
Why is that, in your opinion?
Because it's us that they're scrutinizing.
Yeah, it's the budget. Their dollars, advisory's dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the town is millions of dollars over budget.
Oh, boy.
And they're looking at every line, every penny.
Mhm.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, without being as pessimistic as that, I think they just want to hear, they want to feel comfortable with the fact that they want to approve that budget.
Yeah.
I don't think, I'm not necessarily viewing this as that this budget is on the chopping block by any means. I think they just want to have a better understanding of how this money's going to be spent. And
Yeah.
and-
How it's evaluated.
May I just ask, because I just want to understand if this is a assumption, hearsay, or do we have facts that we can base that on, Michael?
base what on?
What you just said.
I didn't get the impression from the last advisory. I mean,
Okay.
it could come up, people could suggest it, but I didn't get that impression from the last advisory meeting or from the select board budget meeting. That, but yes, anything can happen. But that's, I think, with an adequate story that makes sense. That I think things can go well.
Well, and I would just say that, you know, having been on the last advisory meeting with people like that I've never met before, we're still coming up with the notion that this job, my job at least, or also Gino's job, needs to pay for itself. I'm expecting this coming up again.
So what do you want to say? What do you?
Well,
and
I think
Gino-
we have a good answer for that, because again, we work as a team. but the team has produced more in revenue than it cost. Maybe not many multiples of that, but certainly more than the cost.
Lead
And,
with that very statement.
exactly.
And we
Right,
want to
if
put
I
that
want
one
to
to bed
play-
as fast as possible.
Right, and the question is, they say, and that's one, and the question is, do you feel comfortable saying that that's we hope to get more funding in the current year for some of this stuff, that we keep trying for it. And that it's part of the job is to do that.
Absolutely.
And
Everybody knows it's part of the job, but who knows what kind of money is going to come down the road, right?
of course, but that's having tried and whatever, and maybe not gotten it, doesn't mean that the job wasn't done well. I don't think that anybody's going to view it per se, that if it made X dollars versus Y dollars, that means that the job, that it didn't go well, as opposed to showing you did what you can do, what's there, and you, okay, and it's only one of a number of metrics by which the success of the hours spent can be viewed. But I'll come back to your issue of whether that, it seems with the way things are being presented and the way the chain of command of the story that you're going to present, I'm not quite clear. I'll come back to my question again. Are the two of you going to basically take the lead and speak, and we're there to say that, yes, we view it as a team, we're there to work with it, we're going to generate things, we want to get more participatory along with the coordinators with the select board, that we will, but we're second in line to the two of you presenting this vision.
Okay, I volunteer to make an opening statement and get it rolling. Cover
Okay.
these things we just talked about.
Very good.
As long as you and Dorothy are on the same page about it, then I think we all are. And it's just a matter of, right, there's going to be some questions, some hard questions there, but I think we can address them all.
Can I just add that, in part of the statement that you made, and I think you hit it really well, Gino, by saying, that the income, the overarching goal was that you produce more than your costs, but that you've also, the two of you have started the ball rolling in a huge number of areas, and not all of the areas are areas in that job description that's going to bring money. I mean, one of the bullet point items is, water and water supply, and minimization, and the climate change and vulnerability and resiliency. I mean, that doesn't bring in any money. Looking at the phosphorus and the nitrogen contents of in our town, and sustaining our wells and so on, that doesn't necessarily bring in any money, but it's still really important work that needs to get done. And ultimately, you're involved with that, as well as some of these other things that are a little bit more interesting, of trying to reduce climate change. And it's not that you buy an EV car because it's going to make you money versus buying another car that costs you money. That's right now a perk that is trying to be used to sell EV cars, to get a person to make that switch to the EV car. But ultimately, we're driving one way or the other. So whether the EV car is costing you a little bit more money or saving you a little bit more money, it's ultimately, what is your focus for having an EV car? You want to try to do something to save the planet, and there's a cost associated with that. And on top of that, a cost associated with that, you've been able to bring in extra monies and get a whole lot of programs going that's going to provide a lot of benefit to the town. And I don't know, it's not all that benefit you can see financially. So, the question could come then is how else can we evaluate that then if it's not just financial? So just think about, when that question comes, that all of what you do is being covered, but that there's a lot more that you do that's providing a lot more benefit other than just getting grants for the town to do some of these things.
That's an excellent point, Frank.
I would argue that we want to, besides this money issue, that we could say certain things about what's been raised. I think I said it at the last one, that I'm pretty sure that we need to move away from that metric. But that's only one that I think we explicitly, I would suggest to you, even, or maybe it's our stuff to say that there's a lot more things going on now. We have this new, essentially unfunded mandate to meet the greenhouse gas reductions, which is both a mandate from the state and plus what we should also be doing as a town, as our own group responsibility to the earth and our fellow human beings that we want to get away from. That I think we very explicitly want to get away from that being such it's a metric, but it's only one of many. And the idea that it's going to be making multiple times and that it's going to be a moneymaker position, in some way, is just not the best way to look at this work going forward.
Right. It's very narrow-minded.
And I think your point, Michael, is really important. It is a metric, and it may not even be the most important one by far.
Agreed.
Bring money in, great, but if we're bringing money in and spewing stuff into the atmosphere,
Not great.
what have we gained? So I think that's a really important perspective for advisory to get. Even though they're focused on money, they're also citizens and they're not stupid people.
Right. They get a little caught up in what's policy versus dollars things. We go back and forth about that, but
That's part of their job.
yeah, it's a matter, I don't know, Gino, whether how much, and Dorothea, how much you want to bring up that issue versus something that that in terms of the work going forward, we have to meet that there's a new mandate on the table for everybody to do the greenhouse gas reductions from the state, and that's an important, that's maybe the biggest focus of the coordinator's position, is to address that issue.
Well, absolutely, but if their focus and their concern is financial, that's why I think we need to address that as well. I agree.
Oh, no, I'm not saying not to
100% that
address
it's not
it.
the most important part.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying, is to, in
Yeah.
the middle of all that, to say that the most important part is really the climate change, even though it's just, and let's not lose sight of that we all need to say that message.
How much longer are we going on for today, Michael?
I'm not sure. I was just about to say, what more do we need to say about this?
I think we've pretty much covered what has to happen, and I think Gino's opening it up and then moving out to the things that are beyond finance is really important. But other than that, I don't know that we've got much more to talk about today.
Okay. There's one other big agenda item that's maybe not a lot of time, or we don't have much, is there's the ARPA spending. And there's basically time to do they're making a long list of things for that. And whether that list was sort of due on Friday or so. I already told Diane that we wouldn't have something until this week if we had anything. And whether we could all, and I'm not quite sure what kind of placeholders are needed, just to get some idea in there. Like I sent you an email earlier, that's somebody else doing that placeholder thing. Whether we want to come up with some ideas of such as some extra dollars for earlier conversion to EVs, for example. And whether some possible, and they need to know, and some possible dollars for some climate action plan
Yeah.
related work, which we're probably in, there's probably differences of opinion between all of us as to what should go into a climate action plan. And
But there's still going to be a cost regardless, one way or the other. Either in Dorothea and Gino's time or a consultant to
that's
somebody.
different, is whether their time is different from ARP money.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry.
So there's the action plan, there's maybe dollars for early advance on EV, or even dollars for early to heat pumps.
How about adding maybe to our thoughts of our discussion right now, solar canopies or more charging stations, or the combination of the two?
Solar canopies should probably make sense anyway. I don't think I'd want to spend our ARPA dollars on that, because I think we should either a developer will give it to us at a reasonable price, or it's not worth doing. I don't know if others feel differently, but I would not. I wouldn't put in solar.
I'm kind of thinking about like parking lots, whether it be the schools or at town hall. Not necessarily out in, taking the several acres of our nature and converting them to solar. That's not kind of what I was thinking about when I was.
Oh, no, I'm specifically, yeah. Question is, should capital budget, so there's not a lot of money here. I mean, it's $1 million or 900,000 left, and there's a long laundry list. And I just can't tell whether solar canopies, I mean, they do cost more than rooftop, but I don't know whether there's enough incentives, but I'm arguing that if we can't do, we're going to only do them with a developer anyway. The town's not going to put the money towards those canopies. Is what I alluded to earlier, that I don't think the town owning them is going to be a cost effective in various ways, and transaction costs, the best way to go to these projects. So therefore, I would argue that solar projects should be funded in another mechanism. Other ideas that we can sort of run through?
Charging stations, more charging stations.
I don't know. I guess at the moment, I'd rather wait and see how these do. Unless there's maybe a charging station at the high schools.
I'm just wondering, and we cannot make this too long of a conversation now because we're going on 6 o'clock, 2 hours. I have to fix dinner at some point, but my larger thought on this, and I think Gina will partly, I think, agree on this. We need to tackle the regional school electrification long term. And to leave this out in a climate action plan would be a missed opportunity. And I think we need to maybe embrace the idea, after our students have passed this in town meeting, to do this as a regional project. And I'm saying this because it saves us resources, and certainly other towns have done it. Acton, Boxborough Town Regional School District has done it. And I think there is lots of low-hanging fruit that is located at the schools that we need to tackle.
What's the low-hanging fruit?
The low-hanging fruit is development of solar, installation of this building, the enormous cost that it's currently having, and the school buses, and the possibility of bringing in battery-powered the possibility of Pine Hill Elementary School, to bring that into a better position with battery backup. And that possibly also at the regional school. I cannot speak to this because I haven't looked at these buildings in 2 years. But I know that we will have to tackle the regional schools in a way that for the next 10 years, we find ways to decarbonize this campus. It's the biggest, if you look in our perimeter, if you look at those two communities, these are the largest buildings. And there's no plan for them yet.
Right, the money has to be spent in the next couple of years. I would think that, I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's why I said earlier,
I'm
extra dollars for
happy-
doing heat pumps.
I'm
That's what I
happy-
meant by, what?
I'm happy to hear that from you, Michael, because I got the impression that you proposing Wayland's programmatic climate action plan is something that we should go with, is basically a missed opportunity for us. What's happening in our neck of the woods is we have to really tackle these schools together with Dover. And to find,
Just to interject here for a minute,
yeah,
at the, I lose track. It was either the select board or I think it was advisory committee meeting last week. Yeah, it must have been. Don Fattori essentially ruled out solar for the roof of the school, the regional schools, that there's too much HVAC equipment up there, and they've had other people look at it, and they just think it's just not feasible. They would be interested in solar canopies in the parking lot, but not on the roof. But the
Okay.
heat pumps at the school, the boilers are close to being needed to be replaced. So I think that is a big item that should be pushed.
exactly. And I'm saying this from the outside perspective. And when I worked at Wellesley College, I saw this kind of like, big dilemma of the administration. I meaning like running an educational program and being a real estate and looking at your assets, your real estate assets. You have to have several hats on. And if you don't have these hats or these skills to do that, you have to have outside people to help you steer these costs. And I think it's time to assist Dawn Fattori in the long-term planning of this in a way that she can feel comfortable, and all the other boards that are associated with that, to really understand, to steer these buildings in a way that they will leap forward, and where solar can be done, where heat sources can be done, where battery storage can be done, that these discussions and evaluations and assessments have to happen right now, so that they will be there in 2 to 4 years from now.
So I guess the ARPA funds, right, could be spent on the planning of the electrification of the DS campus.
Absolutely. If we don't find money, this should be absolutely a long-term signature project.
How much money that we need to put into dollar? Didn't say up front, I was going to try to walk through a list of things. We need to put dollar figures next to these.
I'd say $70,000 to $120,000 for an electrification roadmap. If you go to California, you will find cheaper vendors than in Massachusetts. At least Acton Boxborough has done it this way. And
so 70 to 120,000 is a number for a roadmap plan for
electrification,
Dover Sherborn High School campus electrification.
plus several town buildings.
So we can include all the other, can include Pine Hill in that?
I don't
just
know
wanna
how
be
fully-
realistic. Yeah, because, yeah, I mean, the,
You might have a conversation with DPW, Sean Colleen. I mean, I know he's asked for money and Gino, you know more of this than I do. I know they've looked at those buildings for some energy efficiency. So it'd be good to work in concert with,
we have to do something that's very quick and dirty now, and if it makes it through some hurdles, then we can go work with people. But I'm trying to be practical about what we can get done in a day or so.
well.
And unless somebody else wants to take on the effort of what, I mean, if we want to put forth a few things, whether this roadmap plan, focus on the DS campus and do it with Dover, which could be a little bit of a trouble there coordinating with that. I don't know what you Gino, think that that's one option for us.
No, because I think we have an ally in their capital budget chairman who is very strong on electrification and heat pumps, and I think
Who's that?
Barry
Yeah.
Goldman.
I think we can, Cam Hudson would be also ally in that as well. And he's on the sustainability committee or subcommittee to the, Gino, how do they call the finance committee?
Warrant committee.
Warren committee, thank you.
Fine, so we have one thing there, 70 to 110,000, and maybe give it focus at the DS campus and do it with Dover. And we could possibly say if you, Gino, or you, Dorothea, can even make a conversation with either of them, whether if I write something up that you look at, whether that you could say Dover's interested too. It's just a one-liner. So we have one item there. Excuse me. Hold on one second. This is something I have to answer. It'll be very quick. Sorry about the quacking. On a personal humor thing, it's what I use for my kid because we claim her first word was a quack. Okay, do we have a separate, do we want to put in one or two or keep a focus there? Do we want to put in an idea like separate for converging electric vehicles to a conversion to electric vehicles sooner than later, or that we should just push in terms of the regular budget anyway, and not enough cars are going to come up?
I'd say electrification of the town fleet in some towns, that's being kind of like prioritized because it's an easy grab first item. But Gino, I'm not sure how far we are here and if we have the collaboration. I have no idea.
Everybody
The police chief is very interested, but the town fleet consists of police cars, fire trucks, and DPW trucks, essentially. There's no fleet of administrative vehicles, to speak of. Yeah, so
how about 50,000?
it might be worth proposing, just for the sake of, even if it doesn't get selected, just for the sake of kind of pushing that idea and getting it discussed and that sort of thing.
What kind of project and what kind of dollars are involved? I mean, what?
I would just say $50,000, and it's the add-on to go, the extra cost from gasoline to electric. That it would top off, we could use a fund to basically top off the next set of vehicles that come up for replacement. And if there's a cost barrier, that would be a fund to do that.
Just so you know, I have heard some advisory people and select board people have questioned the police chief. Why isn't he buying electric cars? Which, of course, was nice to hear. And his answer was, I can't get them. If I want a car delivered in the next 6 or 12 months, it can't be an electric. And
Is that true?
that was the statement
Okay.
made.
Independent of specifics, since we don't have a lot of time right now. And we just got to get in some placeholders, which we can either drop later under closer scrutiny or revise, maybe. But whether we just have a second thing about electrifying the town fleet. And with whether it makes sense as a pool of, who knows, $30,000 to $60,000, because you don't know what cars are coming up in the next few years, because this money has to be spent within the next 3 years, if I recall.
Yes.
Well, $30,000 probably is not going to get you an electric vehicle that the
Well, this
police.
is the add-on. This is the add-on cost. It only covers the add-on cost.
Oh, okay.
We could put in for about 50,000 and see what
Okay.
it comes. If people have if anybody else has any other 2 cents, I'm just trying to plow through this thing to come up with something quick, because a number of us have to leave the meeting. And whether we even make a separate item, which we don't know the cost of. I guess under the roadmap for electrification, we want to include buildings for the DS. We want to include buildings and buses. We'll just throw it into the DS budget that we're trying to go after the school buses. I can't tell if we own the school buses.
We don't. We outsource them, and there are avenues to basically wait for a new RFP. Gino, maybe you can explain this better, but my understanding is that every, let's say, 3 to 5 years, they're entering a new contract, and it has to be an RFP. In the past, to bring in a electric school provider, you have to bring in a new RFP that.
Okay, done. Don't say anything more. I'm going to interrupt you because the meeting has to end soon, and so therefore it's not part of a capital budget in the next 2 to 3 years. It's part of, since we buy it from outside, it's not a town budget. I've learned that from what you said there. What else? We have 2 items here. And I guess we can put in the charging stations as part of the DS thing at the high school. Okay, I have 2 items. Anything
I
else?
think the 2 is good. We'd be
I think
lucky to
so.
get either one of them.
Yeah.
Can we increase the sustainability coordinator from half-time to full-time?
No, it can't be used for positions,
Yeah.
salaries.
Oh, well.
Okay, it's almost 6 o'clock. Some of us have to go. You have some brainstorm, you could send it to me.
Okay.
I'll work with you, Gino and Dorothea, just to get some wording right, and maybe we can send it out as the 3 of us in the next day or so.
By when, Michael? Do you have to have this? By when?
Last Friday,
Next Friday. Okay.
last Friday,
Last Friday.
yes. I already told her we'd be late, and I was told, get it to me ASAP. So
Is this coming from Diane Morse, this kind of
Yes.
request? I'm not surprised.
everybody made the request. The request was made a while ago from a broader audience. But the deadline was, it came out, I think I had forwarded it to everybody. They asked for ideas about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And I thought I had sent it on to all, and I just replied to her that I wouldn't have anything until after this meeting.
You did, and every other town committee is in the same boat.
Yeah, planning
okay.
board's talking about it tomorrow night.
Anybody, there's other items, but I guess let's pick our next meeting. Do we need to meet before advisory? So we need, advisory's big meeting is on the 26th. I don't know if there's anything to talk about before then, which would mean meeting in a week from now.
The meeting on Saturday?
They're meeting on the 26th,
That's a Saturday.
right?
Yeah, they're
That's all
big,
day meeting.
that's the big Warren article meeting.
Okay.
That's the
They
public
call it
hearing.
Bloody
Is-
Saturday.
Is there some reason for us to meet as a group before advisory, after this Wednesday night meeting?
It depends on the Wednesday night meeting.
Exactly. Do we want to tentatively set something for next Monday if we need it? Or Tuesday? What works between Monday and Tuesday?
Monday is better for me.
Same on me.
Same.
Same for me.
4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 3:30?
4.
Let's keep it at 4, keep it the same.
Okay, we're doing a
4.
4 o'clock next Monday, and that's if needed. I guess we could meet anyway, because we didn't talk about anything anyway. So, other than this stuff here. And then so let's just meet next week at 4.
Okay.
And we'll figure out what we do, how much time we want to spend on broader agenda versus anything. Budget.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Done. I think I'm going to move to adjourn at
6:01.
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay, I got a second. Any discussion? Michael, I, Andy,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Frank,
All right.
Tom.
All right,
Okay, 5-0. We're adjourned.
thank you.
Okay, guys.
Thank you for
Guys.
the conversation. I think we got into a good place.